Good afternoon, everyone. It's approximately 1:30, and call this informal meeting, hearing, however you want to characterize it, for the purposes of having an open discussion of Mayor Iafallo's proposed budget. And we'll get into the particulars about that shortly. But I would like to start this hearing by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all rise, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Since this is not a formal council meeting, there's no need for roll call or agenda. And for the record, although the public was invited, there's nobody that I see here from the public to address any of the concerns, if there are any. And by way of information as to why we decided, or I've decided on this method of handling the budget proposal. In years past, there used to be interviews scheduled by the city council for each and every department head. And having been sitting in on those meetings, it didn't seem to be a wise or prudent utilization of department head time. There used to be discussions. It wasn't very productive. It was a formality. Everybody went through the motions. However, at the end of the day, it didn't appear that there was a need to set aside several hours to interview at 15, 20 minutes, half hour each of the department heads for a presentation from them as to what they were asking for as compared to what the mayor's office submitted as a proposed budget. What I think, and I'm hoping is more effective, is for us to, one, sit as a council and raise any issues with members of the controller's office here to answer questions. We are grateful that Mayor Iafallo is here in case she needs to answer any questions. And we are grateful for some of the department heads who are present for any discussions that they may be interested in. And for everybody's information, the department heads were notified of this meeting and were invited if they had concerns or if they had issues to address to the council concerning the proposed budget. And if there are those, there will be an opportunity to discuss those after we go through the council goes through what we're looking to do here. Now, as members of the council, we can either go through each section, each department of the budget to see if anyone on the council has any questions, or the other way to proceed is to just open the discussion up to the council members and go ward by ward as if a voting order. And if any council member has any concerns or questions on the various issues in the budget or sections of the budget, they can be raised at that time. That may be the more efficient way than rather reciting each section of the budget, which is approximately 59 pages. But I don't know what the council would prefer. Anyone wish to be heard on that as to how to proceed, how you'd rather proceed?
I'd like to second that. The last, if any council member has concerns about the budget, they speak up on that individual thing.
Yeah.
The last step.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, very good. Since we do have the author or a major contributor of three major contributors of this proposed budget present, Mike Ito, I know you've spent a lot of time on this. You're welcome to give us an oversight overview introduction to what the proposed budget is and how it would affect our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to work off of what is essentially page 2 of the proposed budget. It gives highlights, so it's available to everybody. I'm not reciting things that aren't in front of everybody. So the total budget proposed for 25-26 totals $35,734,297. That's a increase over the last fiscal year of about $2.8 million. The garbage fee per unit, which is a separate budget, separate fund within the city, will see its first $10 increase in the entire time that we've had a separate fund for garbage to $264 from $254. The suggested unified city tax rate per thousand is going to be $18.13 in this proposed budget versus $17.52 last year, about 61 cents per thousand, and representing about a 3.48% increase. So there's a couple of things that I'd like to point out that are here in the adjustments that I think are running themes, for this budget, and from what I've seen in other municipalities as well. We see rising costs in a couple of areas, and for the city of Lackawanna in particular, in our undistributed expenses category, we see the healthcare increases that the city has experienced, which is on a different calendar than our fiscal year, and was not known when we did the budget or prepared the budget in the last fiscal cycle. So within undistributed expenses, we see about a 52.4% increase in expense, making up about almost $1.5 million of the $2.8 million of expense increase between the two budget years. We have done some research on that. We have made some contacts on that, and that is what our brokers believe we will still see, and we'll see a more regular increase in healthcare costs this year. So that's what we have budgeted for. As the public probably knows, the police and fire departments both received new contracts since the last fiscal year budget. That represents about $738,000 of the increase, or 26.1%. That's increases in salaries, increases in steps. So that's what that amounts to. The other areas we'll see some, we expect to see some commercial insurance increases, and the maintenance of streets cost is one of the larger numbers at $265,000. So out of that $2.8 million, there's a couple of areas that are definitely driving the budget, that are controlling where the budget is headed, that are, I wouldn't say they're completely immovable, but they're sort of set by contract. On the opposite side, on the revenue side, what the city and other municipalities have benefited from over the last several fiscal years has been the ARPA, or the COVID-related funding, the federal funding for that, which is non-recurring. The city received some funds, probably a little bit out of sequence with the events, but received some FEMA funds for past snow emergencies that have benefited previous budgets. And those funds are not present for the city to benefit from in paying its expenses. So in this particular budget, to maintain only about a 3.5% increase in tax rate, the city has proposed contributing about $2.9 million of unassigned fund balance to the benefit of this budget. And so those things alone, those are all very big numbers. What I've found in the last two cycles of budget that I've participated in the city is that, and because the assessed values of the properties hasn't changed by very much in the 2 years, that it takes a change of additional revenues of $500,000 or additional expenses of about $500,000 to move your tax rate by about 65 cents per thousand. So it's big numbers that are going to have a major impact on the discussion today, And most of those big numbers are fairly set by contract or by circumstance. But that's what I had to say for you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any council members have any questions for Michael before we get into the individual concerns over the budget? More specifically, anyone?
Yeah, just one, Mike. The salary increases next year for police and fire, what's the percent?
If you were to read the contracts, the general salary rate, like raise increase, is 3% for fire and 3.5% for police, because we budgeted for the success of their body camera grant monies that would get them to that level. So we budgeted for the worst case scenario.
And how much added money is that?
Well, year over year, that's the number that I've quoted in page 2, it's about $738,000. There's probably one other thing that's maybe confusing that year over year, is that the fire overtime hasn't ever been budgeted completely in their overtime line. It's been elsewhere in the budget in the past. I've put it all to fire this year. So it's a little bit of a year over year bump that is inconsistent between the 2 years, but it's always been there.
Anyone else?
I just have a question as far as the two proposed budgets. We received one early May and then we received one on the 28th, 2 days ago.
Yep.
What were the biggest changes for the revised one?
So none of them were big changes. Many of the changes were things that, as we've continued to look at this, as we attended the last council meeting and received some questions and some queries about the format of the May 9th budget, the primary thing that has changed between the two presentations is that we, because of the way the calendar falls in this next fiscal year, there's one more pay period, so 27 versus 26 pay periods. When I put the May 9th version together, I budgeted that 27th pay period into everybody's annual salary line, the ones that you are accustomed to seeing. And I decided, in consultation with the mayor and with council president, to pull that difference of the 27th pay period out of the annual salary lines and pull it down to a line called increment, but I called it increment 27th pay period so you could still see it. So that we get the annual salary lines back down to what they have traditionally been.
So were there any raises factored in for the 25-26 budget?
There are raises factored in, both in the contractual raises. There are calculations that are necessary for the bargaining units that have not settled on a contract yet.
Okay, but for the salaried employees that don't confine to
Yes,
civil service.
the mayor has suggested a 3% increases for most of those employees.
And there was also an increase for the mayor's salary. It amounts to what, approximately 5%?
Correct.
Yeah, and, raising it to what, 91,000?
I believe that's about the right number.
Yeah, and just to clarify, if I may,
Yes.
the raises for the the salary department heads, raises were not budgeted for anyone who was hired this year.
Anybody who was hired in the current
In the current year.
in the
does
current
not
year
get a raise
has not received a
for
raise.
For next year.
For you.
But it does go into effect for the next, it defaults, or it's automatic for the next budget.
For instance, we just hired our comptroller. It's going to stay that way until you get to your next budget cycle.
And then that increase will be reflected in the next budget.
If there's an increase, that'll be reflected in that next budget.
No, this increase, if it's approved.
There's no increase for the next budget cycle for positions that were hired this year.
Not for this budget that we're talking about, but it's automatically applied to when we come back together next year to discuss the 26, 27.
Nothing's
budget.
automatically applied.
No increase, even though it's reflected in our and I apologize, Jackie, but since we've used you as an example, so why is there an increase in that salary per se in the budget?
There
No,
isn't,
it's not.
There is not?
there is
In the
not.
revised, it's,
No.
The revised, it should show exactly what we've stated it to be.
and there was the adjustment for the 27 pay period,
Correct.
which obviously there is a need for that adjustment because it does reflect only every 5 years, but that's already automatic as part of their current salary.
It's based on their current salary,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Jackie, do you have anything you want to add to Mike's presentation?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor, is there anything you wanted to say to the council before we get into the particulars?
We're fine.
Very good. Councilmember Muflahi, since the voting usually starts with you, besides the concerns you just raised or the questions you just raised, do you have anything further in any of the other sections of the budget that you care to discuss at this time?
No, but I do have a general question in regards to a tax levy, since this exceeds a 2% increase. Would there be?
Sorry, what was that?
Am I correct that this would be a 8.5% increase?
My understanding was a 3
It's a 3.48%.
Incorrect.
For, not for salaries, but overall?
Overall.
What is
Overall.
the total budget change on page 2 and the revised, the 8.59, can you explain that?
That's not your tax rate. That is just, that's just the difference between the total budget for 24-25
Okay,
and the
so then
proposed budget for 25-26.
Is the 3.48?
The 3.48 is tied to the difference between the proposed tax rate of 1813 and the previous tax rate of 1752.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, anything else, Mayor?
Nothing currently. If I do, I will let you know.
Thank you. Carl? Okay, Dean, anything in here?
I'm fine.
Okay, I just have a couple of things that probably just for my understanding versus anything significant, but under personnel on page 15, and I'm hoping I'm looking at the second amendment of the budget. Under section 101, personal services, 1, 2, 3, the fourth line down, there's a provision for human resource specialist at 35,000. Is that a new position?
Yes,
And how did it come to exist?
it was a new position that the mayor had asked me to introduce to the personnel budget line at a half. It's a part-time position. My understanding is that in the just previous to Ari joining us, that John Gahn had performed some of the HR duties, but even in John's position, the subject had come up about whether or not the city could really use the expertise of a trained human resources professional. And I think that's what the mayor is trying to do with this, is add that to the city.
Adriana,
If I may, a great portion of the attorney's day and week are taken up with human resource problems within City Hall.
I don't doubt that. And Adriana, maybe you can answer this question. You just can't create a new position. Doesn't there have to be a procedure to do that? I don't think it's provided for in the charter. I don't think just a new position would be created without either a referendum amending the charter or councilmanic approval for the position.
Understood. It's Ariana, sorry, Your Honor. Did you want to say something, Jackie?
I believe in a previous council meeting, we had discussed it, but I don't have my notes in front of me.
What was that?
I believe that in a previous meeting that we had, that was
What meeting?
discussed. A previous council meeting. I don't have my notes with me, so I'd have to double check the date of that meeting.
Ariana, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Just trying to think two steps ahead. I'm not aware of, that may have been discussed, but
Okay.
I don't think there was councilmanic action, and I don't recall the particulars of that. Are you saying there was legislation passed?
I know it was discussed, whether or not it was voted on, I'm not certain, so I will look that up.
How did you know that it was discussed?
I remember being discussed about that
You were
position.
present?
I was present, I believe in this.
At one of our council meetings?
I believe so, I could be wrong. I remember being discussed at some point, but I'd have to
I
check
don't
my
remember
notes.
that at all.
No, okay,
Do you remember that? Any,
Not that position.
no,
well, I think we need a legal opinion on that before we can address the budget, at least that portion of it.
Understood.
And there's no, nobody's challenging the,
Mhm.
maybe the need for one,
Sure.
but, you know, it's,
Yep, and I will look into that, again, coming into it on the tail end of the budget, but it's my understanding this individual would be a part-time, non-union position, so it's just a question of, as you point out, authority under the
I
charter.
think we need an answer on that.
okay.
Okay,
But there was also an increase in the city attorney's salary from when John took on office to not necessarily today on, but there was an increase of, I believe, $25,000 because of the extra duties that he was taking on. So are we paying more, getting less, or having a redundant service?
Well, you raise an important issue, and I think we need to look into that. I don't know the answer to it. In fact, there were incremental increases starting with Rick Judah when he was here to cover those kinds of things.
The extras that he was.
In addition to that, my understanding was the law department was also undertaking the oversight of the building inspectors. And that was a contributing factor to an increase also. So you raise a legitimate question that we need to have an answer to. And Grace, maybe you can look through the past,
I thought the assistant attorney was doing,
what is,
code enforcement.
I don't know who is, or who got the raise because of it, because the assistant also got raises. So I think we just need to sort that out.
understood. And if I may, the assistant city attorney does, or will be taking over the zoning and planning board meetings, but code enforcement issues, zoning and planning issues, all of those
But
under the city attorney.
Ariana,
Yes.
the city attorney was obligated to attend the zoning and planning board meetings from the first instance. So
Mhm.
sending the assistant isn't really a change of duties, it's still the law department's
Oh, no, I
responsibility
agree.
to be present.
Yes, no, I agree. I'm sorry, I meant with respect to Carl's comment about the
Oh, I didn't hear-
assistant city attorney.
Carl, what did you say?
The assistant is doing that now. He's taking over that.
I was just
The
confirming
building
what
inspector, the building inspectors, or zoning and planning?
zoning and planning was what I was clarifying. That the assistant city attorney, I think historically had attended zoning and planning. The Christy Cooper, the new assistant city attorney, her predecessor, had a conflict and could not, and I was just clarifying that Christy Cooper, the assistant city attorney, is taking over zoning and planning.
Well,
The attendance of the
we just
meeting.
need a clarification as to what the discussions were for the increases. And I think Grace will need to go back and see where that comes in. In addition, at line 102 of that same section, there's an overtime amount of $3,000. Can you explain that, Mike? Why there'd be overtime in this particular instance? Or why it's
I think
being
it
anticipated?
primarily relates to the functions of the civil service, I believe. I believe it's a small amount of,
When Shannon gives the exams, and she has to work on a Saturday or a Sunday to run the exams, she's given overtime.
And if there's testing of particularly, say for instance, police or fire,
Firemen.
that's what that covers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, looking at page 18, under special items, I noticed on line 1931, employee negotiations of $107,269. And I have the last year's budget in front of me, but I don't have that page. I can look it up if necessary. I don't think there was any line or a zero item included for that in last year's budget, but that's a significant amount. And what does that cover?
you have to, so it's sort of out of sequence, out of time thing for you, because it's, last year's budget, we had full contracts with all of the city employees. This year, we are, I think, short 2 contracts. And so at this point in time, it's kind of like the 27th pay period. If these people are going to get paid something, going to get paid some amount of negotiated increase next year, we have to somehow provide an estimate for what we think that's going to be, and that's what that represents.
So this is not payments made for people who are doing the negotiating. This is an anticipation of negotiated increases.
You can't put their salaries into their particular department lines.
Thank you. That clarifies that.
Yep.
Yeah, going to page 37, under section 400, contractual expenses. Looking at line 423 under water, there's $20,000 being allocated for that. And looking at last year's budget, I've noted that there's a $16,500 increase. Why?
The splash pads,
Is that what it is?
primarily, yep, that's what it is. The water costs for the splash pads was more, was definitely more than was budgeted for in the previous year, so this current fiscal year. And so we've tried to estimate what we think it'll be going into next year. It kind of falls into two parts of the calendar. So part of the splash pad will be August, and part of the splash pad will be next, like June and July, in this particular budget.
Thank you. Under page 38, section 101, personal services again. Second line from the bottom, there's a position, 1 recreational park maintenance leaders, seasonal. What is that?
I guess I'm not sure how to answer that.
I mean, we have park playground attendants. We have all the other positions. I've never seen that position before. It's not that it didn't exist, it could be just my lack of remembering it, but I don't recall ever seeing a position like that. And how do you arrive at the $2,437 for payment? What do they do?
I think it's the part-time, it's just a part-time seasonal position, so it's
Yeah,
very
but I
similar
don't know
to the
what
other attendants.
Tom?
If I may just add on to that,
Yeah,
there are 2 people that work during the summer. They're the ones that drive, that go around, they check all the kids in to make sure they're working the playgrounds. And that is their job. They work the 6 hours, they go to all the playgrounds to make sure
so they're like supervisors?
they're like the supervisors of the
And
playground
that's,
project.
that's an annual cost?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, that's all I have.
I had a question about National Night Out. So there were 2 spots.
What page?
Sorry, page 39, where there's an expense of 20,000. And then there was another, portion of the 5, allocated at 5,000. I marked that.
I can answer that one.
So is it a combined total?
The one, and I'm not sure which one it is, but one pays for the fireworks for National Night Out. The other one pays for the bounce houses and everything else that's going on there that we have. But one is, I think the police, I'm not sure if it's the police or if it's under, youth board, right?
Mhm.
The second one, one
The
of those
second one
2
is,
pays for the fireworks. The one that has a higher amount pays for the fireworks. And the other amounts are for what we have there.
so combined, that event is combined from 2 budgets?
2 budgets,
of
one
25.
for, one's under the police, correct? And one's under under youth board.
Okay, that's all I have. Any comments or questions from council? I'll open it up to any of the department heads who are present. If there's something you wish to address the council with, either on the proposed budget or additional request or whatever, we're here, we're open to listening to that. Anything? We do appreciate your being here, answering the questions, Dan and Tom. There's no members of the public here for questions or whatever, so. Is there anything else?
I just wanted to add something. Many years ago, way before our time here in the city, we had administration and finance. And I don't know if it was called personnel or if it was called human resources. And those positions were eliminated through budget process. And those duties were put on another person in City Hall. This position of human resource specialist that's in here for $35,000, that was a full-time position that the city had many years ago. And I took into consideration the fact that we should not have a full-time position and put it in for part-time, just to give a little relief to the law office department and City Hall. Because there's a lot of things that go on a daily basis that she may be tied up with law stuff or in court or doing anything that if we had someone in the building that we could go to intervene, it would help out. So for us right now, it appears that we're creating a new position, but it's a position that the city always had and was done away with and added to somebody else. And
I don't think any of us know that. And
yeah, years ago, and I could show
how did
you,
you find that?
because I went and did research.
Well, if you could
Annie
show us where that.
Annie Swiger used to be administration and finance, and I don't know the name of the person, I'm still trying to find the name out for personnel. But these were positions that were in City Hall many moons ago. And,
But that would be something we need to know.
yeah, and I will provide it for you.
Yeah, and
I just wanted to give a little background.
And we appreciate that. And if that could be done before our next meeting when we're gonna take up the budget, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Unless there's a,
In that event though, I understand your articulation about how the duties were added on to others, but their salaries also compensated them for that time. It wasn't.
Because of time too.
Absolutely, and they should have been compensated for sure, but we are facing, situations where salaries are at 150 right now, but their obligations and tasks are being reduced. So do we reduce their salaries and then create, or not necessarily create, I know that's not a word that we want to use, but then go back to how we did in the past where we have a specialist just to serve that particular task. Meanwhile, that's another expense. So again, are we being redundant in positions? Are we adding salary where we should be reducing it in other places? That's something that we have to discuss. And I did want to mention that, of course, the lack of participation from the community is actually, it's a bit upsetting, but it's also logical that people work from 9 to 5 on a typical Friday. It's not a holiday schedule for anybody. I myself had to carve out time from my employment. So I would like to see another budget hearing where the public is invited, whether they choose to attend or not, that's their right, but at least give them the opportunity to attend. I would like to see it maybe midweek next week. I know we have to give appropriate notice for them to, A, to know that it is going on, and B, for us to fulfill our legal obligations for the open meeting laws. But inviting the public in, maybe on our discussions alone that they watched today on Facebook or YouTube, they would actually be able to come in with some other questions that they may have, just for the sake of transparency and honesty. And I think it's important. That way they don't have complaints later on, or they have the opportunity to participate.
well, in that respect, I appreciate that. They will be welcome to attend the next council meeting where the budget consideration will be on the agenda, and they'll have an opportunity to be heard then. I would suggest that we leave that request open to see what responses there may be on our website and whatever, as to whether or not people are interested in doing that. I know people work, but there's also accommodating our department heads and council members. I don't know, did council members, or the other council members who are present, have any feelings on that?
No, I think you could rehandle that at the next council meeting. Even if we started the caucus earlier.
Well, we can consider doing that, sure. Councilmember Moretti?
I'm just looking at this now, we do have comments on what we've already experienced here now, and they haven't had a chance to look at it, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it, fine, at the next council meeting, like you said, if we're gonna be bringing that up, it's okay with me, I'm okay with that.
Maybe have the meeting early, have a,
Start a caucus early. But let's leave it open, let's see what the comments are online, and if necessary, we'll either schedule another hearing. There was that possibility in the event that we got really into the weeds, if there were any, apparently there aren't any, of discussing today's needs, to adjourn this for another date to continue it, but it doesn't look like that's gonna be necessary, but we'll keep the window open to see if there's an interest in to have another meeting, and if that's at, after 5 o'clock, then so be it. Let's see what the responses are.
One more question, it's more clerical. Was the revised budget uploaded onto our city website? Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to thank all of the department heads for being present. Mayor, thank you for coming. Jean, thank you for putting this on Zoom. And I would like to thank the council members who did attend for your participation. With that, we'll end the meeting.
Thank you.